I know you want your property managers out there. Bring it in. Where are you? Come on, let's go. I think they're all tired and at the bar. Well, I'll get some people, don't you worry. And we're going to learn a lot from Jennifer. She's a great speaker, and she's the founder of The Lab, and she'll explain more about it. Take it away, Jennifer Walsh.
Thank you, my dear.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, thank you. Thank you very much. Hi, my name is Jennifer Walsh. I live in New York City. And the lab that Jan was talking about is called The Lost Art of Being Human. So I try and help people reconnect to themselves through a better understanding of how nature impacts the body and the brain, and how beauty plays a really big part of how we live our lives every single day. And I've spent 30 years in the beauty industry. In the past 10, I started studying the neuroscience of our spaces, and it's been really fun. So I get to work at 2 universities, and one is here in Boston. So that's a lot of fun. So yeah, you're going to hear me talk a lot about glass, because sometimes glass is everywhere, but we don't realize the actual brain implications of glass. So how do we use glass in a really impactful way? So I always like to start with this, because let's see if I can get the video. Maybe not, if I do it very gently. So even just, I'm going to let you just look at this just for a second. Because while this did have sound, I want people to think about, what does it do to you? Like when you see beautiful reflections of nature, whether it be a sunrise, a sunset, a beautiful vista, we experience this comfort and this relaxation where it takes 40 seconds for your brain to go into relaxation mode. So it relaxes the prefrontal cortex within 40 seconds, and 40 seconds only, just by looking at nature. So that could be even just here, the beautiful greenery in this space really impacts us, kind of relaxes us, our stress levels go down. So these like little tiny micro doses of nature really make a huge difference. Things that we often overlook, things that we're not often thinking about, but they're actually happening to our body. This is a beautiful sunrise I get to experience in New Jersey, where I live in the summertime. So yeah, I leave my New York City apartment to go live very close to this, and it's quite lovely. So again, I'm going to show lots of different imagery of nature as well as the building environment. But when we see images like this, we kind of, again, go into that space of, that makes me feel good. I feel relaxed, at ease. And again, even if you're just looking at nature on a picture, on a wall, a painting, I mean, Jan, you know this, you teach this as well. It doesn't take much. You can do a very, very little bit, but it really impacts you. So I know Jan already talked about biophilia. So really, biophilia is our innate connection to all living things, especially plants and animals and other wood, what have you. Anything that was living, our body connects to. And again, most of this is subconscious. We're not thinking about it. We're not saying, oh, wood, great, I feel relaxed. It's just something in our brains that we feel a connection to wood because it was living. So biophilia and then biophilic design is bringing those natural elements indoors to help benefit our body. So when we think about we're moving back indoors, we're spending 95% of our time inside, which is staggering because we did not evolve indoors, we've evolved outdoors. So what happens to us is stress hormones are rising, productivity dips, relationships are impacted, and even our genes through epigenetics. So epigenetics are how our environments are really playing a huge impact in our health, which we often don't know about, we haven't learned about, but thankfully there's been so much science since the 1980s. Jan knows this very well. So we're very thankful that now we have the science, the neuroscience, and all the health benefits of understanding how our indoor environment really impacts what happens to us. So I do love Thomas Heatherwick. I'm not sure if any of you have heard about Thomas Heatherwick. He's based in London, but he has written a great book called Humanize. I talk about a lot of books often because I think they're so powerful, but Thomas Heatherwick talks about ugly buildings are making us sick. And it's fascinating because it's actually very true, and now we have so much more data and science to prove it. But what's really interesting when we think about the human brain does not like straight lines. We can't do anything about it, but how do we then understand, okay, a lot of straight lines might be hurting us or making us feel uncomfortable in spaces, but how do we then move around those spaces with a lot more curvature, some wood? There's been lots of good studies around eye tracking. So, everywhere around the globe, people are talking about the eye tracking and seeing where the eye feels they're going to all the time. And usually it's around the green spaces, it's around the curvature, it's around the natural elements, which I'll be talking about as well. So I like the cost of ugly is a very, very big cost. So Jan knows our good friend Ty Farrow talks about enriched and impoverished. So what's the difference between enriched and impoverished environments? So you think about spaces that are enriched, that have natural materials, or varied textures, there's a lot of curiosity. So there's a way to explore the space, and we're curious. We're human, we're very curious creatures. But if they're impoverished environments, they become very sterile, gray, there's nothing to look at. Versus when you're in a place like this, there's so much to see, especially this booth right here, there's a lot of interesting elements here that isn't normal, that we don't often see. So you think about the neurological effects that go in between the enriched and impoverished. And of course, our brain is very dulled exactly by these impoverished spaces. And Ty also talks about, so Ty Farrow wrote a great book called Constructing Health. Do you have that yet? Yeah, it's a great book. It's a big, giant book. But Ty Farrow, he wrote Constructing Health, and he talks about, can we construct health? Because most of our lives, we think about pathogenesis is about how do we treat illness? How do we fix what we've done? Unconsciously, we're doing things to our bodies that we're not even aware of. But how do we go from pathogenesis to salutogenesis by thinking about how do we create health? What are the things that are creating healthy spaces for us, whether it be our homes, our offices, condos, what have you, whatever we're creating, how do we create health within those spaces is really, really important. And what's great, there are measurable results, improved memory recall, reduced staff burnout. People are just happier to be there. They don't mind being at work if they have to be at work in a very rich environment that's full of health. And so we think about there's so many beautiful buildings that get great awards because they're so stunning and majestic, because they're big and they're glass, and they think, wow, that's great. However, there's some new studies. Dr. Cleo Valentine, she's over I think she's in England actually. She just did some new studies around what happens when we walk around some of these buildings that are primarily glass, and there's nothing to look at. There's nothing that's bringing us in. But what's so incredible is that we often walk faster past the glass buildings. They're just glass and nothing else. And we leave those buildings more stressed. And oftentimes, I kind of wonder, the desire to spend less time is usually because these offices are where we have to go to work. Some people say, I don't want to be there because I have to work all day. But she did see that the studies were showing people didn't want to be there. It was uncomfortable. So we think about our space as almost like a nervous system. So when you go somewhere, whether it be a hotel lobby, an office, a doctor's office, you can kind of see people fidgeting sometimes. They're not comfortable, maybe they're moving in their chair. I was just at a conference sitting in 2 weeks ago. The temperature was so cold, the seats were so uncomfortable, the ceiling was so low, everything was very uncomfortable. So that's the nervous system of the space interacting with your body. So I always think that we are a giant antenna and we are receiving exactly what's around us at all times. So we think about how do we make things that are more beneficial to our nervous systems, because the building is also a nervous system. Sarah Goldhagen wrote a great book, Welcome to Your World. I think it came out 5 or 6 years ago. But again, we evolved to move through forests and not facades. And especially facades that were just made for people to go in and out of. They're not really made for the human experience. They're not made for human connection. So our brains crave the texture, variation, of course, nature, and rhythm. Sometimes things that we're not even used to, but we like that rhythm of uncertainty. So think about the evolutionary design of human beings. We're not used to these straight lines, very cold and sterile spaces. So here we go into the textures, the sounds, the scents, and of course daylighting. So even like spaces like this, at least we have daylight coming in. So even though we are in a convention hall, we are in a space which is technically gray, but it's also, how do we have the daylighting come in? Are there any scents? So what are we picking up? We are sensorial beings, craving sensorial experiences 24/7. Again, we often don't think about it. It is subconscious, it's unconscious. We just kind of move throughout our day curious and wondering, what am I smelling? What am I seeing? So I always ask people, what you're doing outside, when you're going for your walk in the park, when you're on a great adventure, you're experiencing all those senses, and you have to bring that back inside. So I hate to say the architecture of stress, but it's a real thing. So allostatic load is the wear and tear of your body from chronic stress. So you're going to see a lot more people talking about allostatic loads because it is the stress that our environments are causing us, again, unconsciously. But sometimes we don't feel well in a space and we don't know, is it something I ate? Is it something I did? Did I have too much fun last night? But often it's just the space itself. So the building stressors can be the poor lighting. So you see sometimes like flickering lighting inside and it's just so aggravating. Or there are sounds, or could be just constant sounds happening. Or I call them noises, not sounds. Noises that are very, very distracting, low ceilings, repetitive design, and of course the lack of anything living besides the humans within it really kind of dulls our senses and our experience within it. So, this makes me a little uncomfortable. So I'm sure many of you have been to stores or spaces where this is what you see. And I couldn't tell you where any of these places are. I know where they are, but you couldn't tell me where they are or what we're doing, but there's this chaos and there's this blandness, and it just looks so uncomfortable. I look at that and I get this queasy feeling inside of me saying, oh, that's the last place I want to be, is any of those locations in retail. I come from retail. I was a retailer for a very long time, and now I help other retailers create experiences indoors. So when I see places like that, it hurts my soul. It's a little soul crushing, if you ask me. But then you think about the walking speed study. Again, Dr. Cleo Valentine has been studying this. So when we have glass, it's just glass without any other architecture around us, we kind of tend to walk faster. Our heart rate rises, our mood is declined, and we walk pretty quick. But we think about beautiful, vibrant storefronts. We go to a beautiful downtown or walk around Boston, these old historic buildings. We're interested, we're engaged because it looks beautiful, and we're fascinated by the old infrastructures. And beautiful storefronts are, again, one of those things I see a lot here. So the studies are people lingered longer, the mood improved, and the walking speed decreased because they're more interested in the facades and what's going on around and inside the space. So you think about, go back to this and that placelessness and how ugly and cold and sterile that looks, and you go, how do you feel when you look at those three locations? It's so very different. And it doesn't take a lot. I mean, Jan does this for a living. You create these spaces that are beautiful and welcoming, and people want to linger and stay and hang out. So there's something in California. I worked with a company called Rituals, which is based out of Amsterdam. So I fell in love with their stores and how they're creating their footprint globally. And it's just very warm. Again, whenever there's wood present, people get excited. Again, relaxed to be there. I'm going to go back to that, going back to the walkability too. So things that interest us, that really kind of say, oh wow, this is interesting to me and it's cool and I'm curious. So right here in Boston, I'm not sure if any of you know about the Lenox Hotel. I love this hotel because again, it brings history and there's curiosity and there's a lineage to the space. So this is not placelessness. There's a reason for being. And the reason that they kept it going is because people want to be there. So when you go to a new city, usually people want to go to places that have history. And there's a desire to learn about the history. And I love that this was built in 1900s. It was privately owned and is still privately owned. It was changed hands in the 1960s, but I am staying there right now. And I had to put this in because the structure's so beautiful. So when you walk inside, there's so much detail and there's so much to see and there's so much to learn about. So when you create spaces, you want people to say, wow, this is fascinating. There's a reason why it's here. And the fact that places like Boston have this great architecture and beautiful history, you want to keep that. So when you're building spaces, think about honoring the land in which you're sitting on. What was there before you? What came before you? And what can you do to kind of resurrect that interest and intrigue? Because again, that the brain and the body is very, very intrigued by it and wants to be there. I'm kind of sad about the, I don't know why the lions are no longer around, but I guess that's a whole other story I'll have to figure out. But the lion is actually all throughout the hotel, so it's part of their logo as well. So yeah, I really love this hotel. So how do we create environments for human flourishing? Because you want opportunities for activating the senses, chance encounters to maybe meet people. Bumping into Jan last night on the street of Boston was very interesting as well. So chance encounters, how do we create environments or little tiny city blocks where people want to be outside, or they want to kind of mingle and be together? When you're walking by glass buildings or anything that's just very plain, and there's very nondescript, we walk quickly, we don't want to be there. But how do we create spaces that people want to go inside? This was my previous store. I used to own a chain of stores called Beauty Bar back in the 90s. I sold it in 2010. So a little backstory. When I created Beauty Bar, I wanted wood, I wanted slate walls, I wanted things to be alive, I wanted lots of natural light. My stores were in Florida at the time, and every single person I told what I was doing told me I was doing it all wrong, that no one cared about the interior of a space. And I'm very glad I never listened to them. Because every expert, I was a young 20-something-year-old person. Back in the 90s, I did not know what I was doing, but I knew I had a feeling that I wanted people of all ages, of all types, to be come in and just linger and hang out and spend time. And sometimes that was to my detriment because people would just hang out for hours and just sit around on the ledges or the chairs and never leave. And I sold wellness and beauty products and so on. So it was an interesting experience, and also almost like a living lab for myself in a way that I didn't realize, because people would say, what are you doing? Why are people buying so much, or why are they there all the time? So yeah, it was biophilic design before we had a name for it. So I'm going to try and share. I don't think you can hear the sound, but maybe there's a little. Okay, wait. I'm trying to click. It's very sensitive. Wait. Oh. Okay. It's raining, but you can't really hear it. What? Oh, yeah. Okay. That's true. Wait. It's just very sensitive. I'm trying to click. So, Jan knows this, but this is where I live. I live in a tent every summer. So I leave my New York City apartment, and I've been living in this tent every summer for 36 years. And it's a 20-foot by 20-foot tent. There are 114 of these tents. And what's really interesting, these tents have been there since the 1800s. So again, we have history here that's very intriguing and fun and interesting, but also the fact that I get to live in a living structure, and I get to know exactly when it rains before it rains because I can smell the soil. And it's fascinating because it happens every single time. I can be sitting there and I can smell it. I know exactly what day it is. I know what week it is out of the summer because, again, the light is starting to change. My environment changed with nature around me. I was just saying to Marisol that I can know exactly if it's August or September because now the acorns fall on the top of the tent. I said, okay, it's almost September, the acorns are falling. So it's that innate connection to nature to really know exactly your surroundings. You know what month it is, you know what day it is, you know what's happening in the environment around you. Again, this kind of living is not for everybody, but it is quite fun to live in a tent for 4 months out of every year, every single year. So the difference between sound and noise I was talking about a few minutes ago. Noise is that sound of the jackhammering or the honking horns. It's really disruptive, but oftentimes, again, I live in New York City, the other times when I'm not in the tent, and it's very aggressive to me. I hear it so much because most people tune it out, but it impacts our cardiovascular system, it impacts our brain health, it impacts so much about our epigenetics that we don't even realize it because we just push it aside. So the difference between sound and noise, so I think about the sound of the ocean or a sound of the rain on a tent, these little things that we can do really impact our environment. If you can't live in a tent, I always tell people just to go ahead and try and use your Alexa device, your Google device, whatever you might have, and play these nature sounds. Pink noise, white noise, but primarily nature sounds are the most relaxing to us. There's some great studies that came out from Bill Browning, another person that we know very well. So he's been studying birdsong and bird sounds when we're indoors, especially for children in classrooms. So they found that fourth graders, one room had birdsong, very, very little bit that you guys had before I started speaking. You could hear the birdsong a little bit. The children that had the birdsong in the classrooms, they had less absenteeism, they did better on test scores, and they were kinder to the teachers. The other room did not have that. So it's fascinating. And again, it's all because our evolutionary biology, our DNA, we remember that when there's birdsong, we're comforted, we know that there's no threat, we're gonna be okay. So when there is no birdsong, that's when the danger encroaches us, that's when the danger is close. I think about my parents' house in Florida. They have lots of animals in the backyard. It's almost like a nature preserve. But when there are hawks or eagles overhead, all of the other animals go away. So they have otters and beavers. They have all these kind of things that are always around. But the minute we know there's nothing around is because the hawk or the eagle are flying around. All the other small birds also disappear. So the big threats are there for them. So that's when you start listening and hearing what's happening around you. You get really tuned into your immediate environment. So we think about what can we do to really take an audit of what we're building and what we're creating. It doesn't have to be a lot. It doesn't have to be hard. You can do very small things that walk around the building. Are people lingering or are they avoiding spaces? So what are they avoiding and what are they lingering around? Are they outside? Are they inside? Also add complexity, plants, textures, and materials. And again, add the layers like we have here. We have the couch, we have the carpet, we have the table, all these things that add elements that we really enjoy. And does it renovate? Oh, you can renovate the experience, not just the square footage. You can add small little doses of nature. I call it microdosing. So how do you microdose nature in your space? It doesn't take a lot. It doesn't have to be expensive. But everyone here does a great job at Cityscape, so they can definitely help you with that. And what buildings really manage, we think about, they're really helping our feelings, our emotions, our health, and human potential. Again, these are not things that we often talk about or think about, but they're a huge impact in how we live our lives because we often overlook it. So how do we create these spaces that activate our health, that make us feel warm, welcome, and invited? And that's me. So if you have any questions, please feel free to ask, or you can always email me if you have any questions about the science or the data. So there are two universities that I study, the Center for Neuroaesthetics down in Pennsylvania. So we've got lots of data and science behind it. I always thought it's great to say it feels good, but it's even another thing to have the real data and science and the research behind us to say, okay, we need this, we all need this. So I'm really glad that everyone here is doing the work to make us all better humans. We're kinder, we're more empathetic, and it also helps us cool the spaces that we're in. We're thinking about how hot these days have been, so how do we cool our spaces and keep them comfortable for all of us? So thank you. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate it.